The sound of shattering glass broke the silence. David's hands trembled as he gripped the whiskey tumbler, his eyes fixed on the divorce papers scattered across the kitchen counter. His once pristine home, a symbol of 12 years of marriage to Emily, now felt like a prison, each shadow whispering betrayal. 2 nights ago, Emily had stood in the same doorway, arms crossed, as she casually announced her plans. "I'm going on a date, David," she had said the word date, rolling off her tongue as if it were no more significant than a quick errand. David had laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "A date?" he repeated, each word soaked in disbelief. "With who? Or should I ask how many?" Emily didn't flinch. "His name is Eric Heck. A colleague," she replied, her tone casual, like she was talking about a dinner reservation. I need this. I need to feel alive again." The words hit David like a physical blow. Alive? Hadn't 12 years together been enough? The mortgage, the weekend trips, the laughter shared over coffee in their sunlit kitchen. Wasn't that life? Or had it all been a lie? "Do you even hear yourself, Emily?" he asked, his voice trembling with restrained fury. "You're married. You swore vows. Does that mean nothing to you?" Emily shrugged, her indifference cutting deeper than any argument. "I've given you everything, David. It's my turn to have something for myself." David didn't argue that night. Not because he agreed, but because he knew fighting someone who had already decided to burn the bridge was futile. Instead, he gave her one last warning, his voice low and icy. "Do what you want, Emily, but actions have consequences." The following morning, David woke early, resolve hardening in his chest like granite. This wasn't just betrayal. It was war. If Emily wanted to shatter their life together, he'd make sure she felt the weight of every piece she broke. He started his day with precision, crafting the image of a man reborn. A professional haircut replaced the overgrown mess he had neglected in recent months. A sleek navy blazer tailored to perfection replaced the wrinkled shirts of his complacent married life. His battered sedan gleamed after a meticulous wash, reflecting the man he was becoming. By the time Emily descended the stairs, dressed in a tight black dress that screamed desperation, David barely spared her a glance. She paused, clearly expecting a reaction, a flicker of jealousy, but all she got was indifference. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his tone dismissive as he grabbed his keys. Her lips twisted into a scowl. "What the hell does that mean?" David smirked, the kind of smirk that wasn't warm but sharp enough to cut. "Exactly what I said, Emily. Enjoy your date, and remember, there are always consequences." Before she could respond, he was out the door. David drove to a small wine bar on the outskirts of town where Rachel, a co-worker he had grown close to over the past few months, awaited him. Their connection had always been platonic, until now. The betrayal he felt had stripped away his inhibitions, allowing him to see Rachel in a new light. She greeted him with a warm smile, like sunlight piercing through the storm clouds of his life. "David," she said, her voice soft but tinged with concern, "you look different." "Different how?" he asked, slipping into the seat across from her. Rachel studied him, her gaze lingering longer than necessary, confident, determined. They ordered wine, and the conversation flowed easily, an antidote to the chaos he had left behind. For the first time in weeks, he laughed, a deep, genuine sound that startled even himself. But as the evening wore on, a darker resolve settled in his chest. This wasn't just about moving on. It was about making Emily understand the magnitude of her betrayal. She wanted to play games? David would make sure he rewrote the rules. Emily returned home late that night, her high heels clicking on the tile floor. She stopped short when she saw David in the living room, calmly sipping a glass of scotch. "You're still awake?" she said, her tone cautious. David's eyes flicked to her, cold and unyielding. "How was your date?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Emily faltered, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "David, don't bother," he interrupted, setting his glass down with a sharp clink. "I don't care where you went or what you did, but you'll care soon enough." her brows furrowed in confusion. What's that supposed to mean? David rose from his seat, his movements deliberate. It means you've made your choice, Emily, and now I'm making mine. The next morning, Emily woke to an empty bed. On the kitchen counter, David had left a single envelope containing the divorce papers and a note. Actions have consequences. Enjoy your freedom. But freedom wasn't what Emily would find. David had already set his plans into motion, a chain of events designed to dismantle every comfort she had taken for granted. David stood outside Lucas's law firm, gripping a manila folder filled with every piece of evidence he had collected. Bank statements showing unexplained expenditures, phone records with late-night calls to unknown numbers, and a few carefully chosen photographs. Enough to prove infidelity, without tipping Emily off to how thoroughly he had prepared. Inside, Lucas greeted him with a firm handshake. You've always been level-headed, David. So tell me, what's driving you this time? David's eyes darkened. 12 years of lies. 12 years of giving everything to someone who decided I wasn't enough. I want her to see what she's thrown away, and I want it to hurt. Lucas leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing at his lips. Then we're not just filing for divorce. We're going for blood. Emily's day started like any other, coffee in hand, scrolling through her phone. But when she saw the message from her boss, her stomach dropped. Come to the office immediately. We need to talk about your position. Emily arrived at the office to find David waiting in the lobby, a calm yet chilling presence. Beside him sat a private investigator, his expression unreadable. He handed her a folder, and Emily's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were photos, intimate shots of her and Eric, taken over the last month. Beneath them was a detailed report, a timeline of the nights she had claimed to be working late or meeting friends. You had me followed, she whispered, her voice barely audible. David's voice cut through the tension like a blade. You gave me no choice. Actions, Emily, they always have consequences. Her boss stepped forward, clearing his throat. This is a violation of company policy. Emily, you're terminated, effective immediately. Emily's world came crashing down as David walked out without a word, leaving her to face the fallout alone. Later that evening, she returned home, only to find the locks changed. She banged on the door, shouting David's name, but he didn't respond. Instead, a neighbor handed her an envelope containing a single key and another note. Your things are in storage. The address is inside. This house is no longer yours. Emily stared at the note, her hands shaking. How had everything unraveled so quickly? Just days ago, she had convinced herself that David would forgive her, that he would always be there to fix things. But now, the man she had underestimated was dismantling her life, piece by piece. David's revenge wasn't just personal. It was methodical. He enlisted the help of Ava, a trusted confidant who had seen the cracks in his marriage long before he did. Together, they crafted a plan to make sure Emily felt the full weight of her betrayal. You're sure about this? Ava asked as they sat in her dimly lit apartment, surrounded by legal documents and timelines. David nodded, his expression resolute. She wanted freedom. I'm giving her exactly what she asked for. Ava smiled, a glint of admiration in her eyes. You're not just walking away, David. You're making sure she never forgets what she lost. Emily's new reality hit hard. Her savings were frozen, tied up in legal disputes. Friends who had once been her emotional support started distancing themselves, wary of the drama surrounding her life. Even Eric, the man she had risked everything for, stopped answering her calls after David's investigator paid him a visit. One night, Emily showed up at David's office, her makeup streaked from tears. She clutched at his arm. David, please, she begged. I made a mistake. I see that now. Just give me a chance to fix this. David looked at her, his expression unreadable. A mistake, Emily? This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And now you'll live with it. While Emily floundered, David thrived. His newfound confidence extended beyond his personal life, earning him respect at work and admiration from colleagues. Even Ava, who had always been a supportive friend, began to see him in a new light. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner, Ava leaned closer, her voice soft. "You're a different man now, David. Stronger, smarter." David smiled faintly. "I had to be. Emily didn't just betray me. She forced me to see the truth about myself." Ava reached for his hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "She may have broken you, but you're the one rebuilding." Meanwhile, Emily's life continued its downward spiral. Desperation led her to make poor decisions, each one dragging her further from the life she had once known. She found a part-time job at a diner, the only place willing to hire her after David's lawyer exposed her infidelity and financial mismanagement during the divorce proceedings. Every day, she endured the whispers of coworkers and the judgmental stares of customers who recognized her as that woman, the one who had ruined her marriage for a fleeting thrill. The humiliation was unbearable, but she had no choice but to endure it. Late one night, after her shift, Emily found herself scrolling through old photos on her phone. Pictures of her and David, smiling during holidays and vacations, their arms wrapped around each other. She sobbed quietly, clutching the phone to her chest. Regret was a cruel weight, pressing down on her harder every day. As for Eric, the man she had gambled her life on, things were no better for him. David's private investigator had made sure his indiscretions were exposed to Eric's employer, his clients, and even his family. Rumors of his affair with a married woman spread quickly. Within weeks, Eric found himself ostracized, with his colleagues distancing themselves, promotions evaporating, and his personal relationships crumbling. The final straw came when his girlfriend, unaware of his infidelity until then, packed her bags and left him. He moved out of town soon after, leaving behind a trail of broken connections and a tarnished reputation. It was a crisp winter afternoon when David ran into Emily unexpectedly. He had stopped at the grocery store to pick up a bottle of wine for dinner with Claire, his new girlfriend, when he saw her in the parking lot, struggling to start her battered car. For a moment he hesitated, torn between walking away or confronting her one last time. In the end, he approached her. "David," she whispered, her voice cracking when she saw him. He stood there, his expression unreadable. "I didn't expect to see you here." Emily looked away, ashamed. "This is my life now," she murmured. "I deserve it, don't I?" David's jaw tightened. He wasn't cruel by nature, but he couldn't deny the satisfaction he felt at seeing her humbled. "We all live with the choices we make, Emily. That's life." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, David, for everything. I was selfish, blind. I don't even recognize myself anymore." David sighed. The anger that had once consumed him was now replaced with a quiet resolve. "I hope you find a way to move forward, Emily. But whatever we had, it's gone. You need to accept that." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the cold. David's life with Claire continued to flourish. They moved in together, their relationship marked by trust, laughter, and mutual respect. Claire's unwavering support helped David heal the wounds Emily had left behind. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace in their cozy home, Claire rested her head on David's shoulder. "You're a good man, David," she said softly. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise." David smiled, pressing a kiss to her hair. "And you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." As for Emily, she eventually left town, seeking a fresh start far from the place where her mistakes had defined her. She found a small apartment in a quiet city and began rebuilding her life, one step at a time. The pain of losing David never fully faded, but it became less a reminder of what she had lost and more a lesson she would never take for granted again. David, meanwhile, embraced his new life with Claire. He learned that love wasn't about sacrifice alone, It was about partnership, respect, and mutual growth. Though the scars of his past remained, they no longer defined him. He had risen from the ashes of betrayal, stronger and wiser. And as he looked toward the future, he knew one thing with certainty. He would never settle for less than he deserved again.